Now, Mr. Vidal, please. There are several programs that provide English language training to those whose first language is not English. The waiting lists for all the programs, the waiting lists, I should say, are quite long. What can or should the city do to be sure that all residents can communicate in English?
That's a great question. As a person who knows both languages, Spanish and English being my second language, Spanish being my first one, I think it's important for newcomers to the country to learn English. I think that's key to be successful in this country. The city is offering certain programs, and I was correct, there are long wait lists, such as the Family School, Power Program, and others. And it's important, and also Watch also provides those kind of services as well. It is important that the city realizes that there's a need out there. There's a need for newcomers, for that group of people who need to learn the language to take classes to learn English. It's part of this will allow the city, allow community to be built. Why? Because once you start learning the new language, you will actually become part of the community. You become part of Waltham. The city, I know there's always budget restrictions and other things, but I believe that if money is set aside, this will only make our city better, because our citizens will learn the language and be able to communicate better with other Waltham residents. Thanks.
Thank you. Mr. Cardillo, next, I noticed in your response to the previously supplied question, you indicated your concern about public safety in our relatively insecure times. Mm-hmm. You wrote of your Homeland Security tactical training as it would be of value to the City Council, and your insight about funding security measures. Would you elaborate on these two credentials, your knowledge of Homeland Security tactical training and your insight about funding security measures?
As a deputy fire chief and as chief of the department, I was afforded the privilege of going to training seminars and homeland training on a regular basis, in briefings, and so I'm pretty aware of what's going on a regular basis. And I think, you know, I don't want to run somebody else's department. That's not the councilor's position. But as a city councilor, I believe I could be an independent voice that actually knows what their challenges are, that could maybe help the other councilors understand, maybe help the citizens understand exactly what these challenges are coming up. And during an emergency, I think I could be an asset to the departments as a liaison between the public and the departments. And getting funding, I'm very proud of the funding I was able to bring into the Waltham Fire Department through the federal grant process. There's an art to writing grants and getting them and networking, and I could pass that on and work with the police and fire departments and public safety on how to get that. I believe I brought in over $2.5 million in my last 3 years.
Thank you. Yep. Next, I'll address Ms. Kalura. Unlike many cities and towns, Waltham does not have an adult education program at present. We have had in the future, in the past, excuse me. Do you feel that there should be such a program reinstituted in Waltham, and if so, what can be done to institute it?
Another good question. We should have an adult education program in Waltham. There are young people that leave high school to raise a family single-handedly. There are people who come here from other countries and would like to learn English and get an education here where they might not have had that opportunity in their own country. I think it's very, very important to have well-rounded young people because they become well-rounded and hopefully involved in the community, adults. You know, I think we all know someone, either a friend or a family member, that did have to drop out of school at one time or another for whatever reason. We had a lot of servicemen who dropped out of school to serve our country. And when I was in high school, I knew a couple of brave young men that did that, served in Vietnam, and some came back to further their education and became family men, raised families, and did it well. So I think that's very important to young people. And I have to add that in these times, I think in addition to adult education, I really think that we need a good physical education program in our schools, and also music and arts. I mean, if you're going to talk well-rounded, wonderful human beings that are enriched and growing, I think all of those are important. So every aspect of adult education is important. So I do support that. Thank you.
Thank you. That concludes the second round, and I think you'll agree that we had some very substantial responses, and I appreciate that. And so we'll move on to round three at this point, and I'll begin my questioning with Mr. O'Brien. Mr. O'Brien, as part of the League's Waltham Visions project, a number of people remarked on the trash in the streets in the downtown area, and a lack of trash cans on Main Street, for example. How would you address the issue of cleanliness in the downtown area?
Well, I think we have to all realize that we live in this city together, so we should really have kind of an awareness program, you know, especially with our businesses, you know, downtown, and educate them and teach them. You know, I have 2 kids, so, you know, if I see a piece of trash, I try to pick it up if it's reasonable enough, and kind of teach them and just say, see this piece of trash, throw this away. It's about learning. It's about thinking about what you're doing. You know, I like to go to Dunkin' Donuts probably twice a day, and sometimes I see some of the trash there. When I first got elected in 2000, I called the owner of one of the Dunkin' Donuts, and I just said, hey, let's get this cleaned up on Main Street, and they did. They got out there and they cleaned it the next day. There's also graffiti. There was a building in Bank Square which had weeds growing up. It had graffiti painted all over it. And that wasn't acceptable to me. You know, as you drive into Waltham, that was the western gateway to our community, and it wasn't acceptable that this building was covered with graffiti. So I found out who the owner was. They didn't live in the city, and I called them up, and I said, please clean up this site. And they did. They came out and they cleaned it up. So it's things like that. It's about being aware. It's about educating. It's about all working together and taking a little bit of pride in our community, and not being shy. If you see something that needs to be get cleaned up, get it cleaned up, or get to the person who owns it and have them clean it up. So I think it's a community effort. So it's all about taking pride. You know, I mentioned earlier about going around and seeing what everyone's doing with their properties. It's incredible, the landscaping that's been done. It really brings everything up. You know, we put in a new wall in our house 2 years ago out front, and it really improved that whole side of the neighborhood. So it's about taking pride in your community. Thank you.
Thank you. I think it would be productive to repeat a question like that to somebody who is a challenger, so I'll ask Mr. Richardson the same question. As part of the League's Waltham Visions project, a number of people remarked on the trash in the streets in the downtown area and a lack of trash cans, for instance, on Main Street. How would you, as a counselor, address the issue of cleanliness in the downtown area?
Thank you for that question. I agree with everything Mr. O'Brien said, and I think we can even take it a step further, and we can get the colleges and the schools involved. Because when I was an undergrad, I loved going around and participating in the community that I was involved in and volunteering. So having weekly cleanup days where different student organizations could come and help clean up. I also have found myself walking down Main Street or Moody Street with trash in my hand, and just wondering when the next trash can was going to be, and I'd look up the street and wouldn't see anything, so I just put it in my pocket and just wait until I got home. And I think that not a lot of people are going to do that. A lot of people are just going to drop it or throw it on the ground. And so I think we do need more trash cans on Moody and Main Street. I've heard the sort of pros and cons of trash cans, and I think the pros vastly outweigh the cons, which, you know, if somebody's picking up the trash anyway, what's one more stop? Thank you.
Thank you. I'll move now to Mr. Vidal. A survey of the homeless done in Waltham in January showed 574 homeless individuals, with 489 of them living in hotels. What can or should the city do to address the problems of these individuals, and that includes families, not just individuals, but individuals with families?
Thank you. I am aware of the situation. The homeless, they currently live at the hotels right up on, near Winter Street. Most of these people who are in this kind of situation in their life, of course, they've gone through some traumatic experiences, therefore they're homeless now. The city should definitely, in a way, embrace the services that it currently offers, that other organizations offer to the homeless, and work with them in order for these group of people to feel more welcome by the city. I believe that places such as the Salvation Army or the Day Center on Alder Street should be able to provide that support that's needed. I'm really not sure whether the city is in the position to build or go anything when it comes to that big, when it comes to provide housing to the homeless, but I think it should work with organizations here in Waltham to provide a better way of living for these people as they go into this transitory period in their life. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Cardillo. As part of our Waltham Visions Project Hour, meaning the League of Women Voters, people noted that there was a large number of empty storefronts in the downtown area. What can the city council do to address this issue?
I believe this goes back to my zoning and planning of revitalizing the downtown and promoting small business and economic development within the city. It's very important. We need to market our brand. We've chosen our brand, which is the Watch City. Through zoning and through the planning department, we can push that brand out there, and we can decide how we want our storefronts to look so that, it's an attractive, manicured downtown that invites people to go walking safely. And I'd just like to comment on the trash receptacles. One of the reasons there aren't trash receptacles is because the city had felt at the time that there were too many people going in for the bottles, speaking back to your homeless problem. And economic development will give jobs and places and pride for the community. And that's how I think it should be worked.
Thank you.